That's right, it said in the kitchen with Anne and Laura, because today we're going to visit one of my other book friends, Anne Shirley, and the cookbook that was done in her name by Ellen Montgomery's granddaughter, Kate MacDonald. And we're going to sort of be doing that recipe, and I hope you enjoy Sarah's Summer Kitchen Shortbread. Well, like I said, today I'm going to be, in a way, using a recipe for Mrs. Irving's delicious shortbread that comes from the Anne of Green Gables cookbook. Now, I said sort of because this recipe and I are old friends. I first got this copy of it from my cousin back when the Kevin Sullivan Anne of Green Gables movie came out. And she gave this with a set of shortbread cookies. But well, they were really, really good, and I wanted to find out how she did them. But I have been working on the recipe since then. So this is not exactly Mrs. Irving's shortbread, but I hope you will think it will count. And I'm also going to share this on the Ellen Montgomery Readathon as my contribution to doing something Ellen Montgomery this month. So I hope all of you Anne fans are enjoying it too. Now we're starting out with 1 cup of softened butter. Now this is actually the thing I have the most trouble with because I like to make this recipe in historic settings a lot, and a lot of times the butter does not want to stay softened. In fact, the last time I made it at Ushers Ferry, I had to put it in the warming oven to melt it again because just sitting on the table it had gotten all hard again. So to get softened butter, I normally recommend taking the butter out of the refrigerator at least a day ahead. And then this would be 2 sticks if you get your butter by the stick. If you get your butter by making it, I'll have another video on how to do that coming up. But this is the soft butter. And that's step 1. Step 2 is we need 1/2 cup of powdered sugar. Now, I didn't put it in a little glass thing because there are 2 trains of thought about cooking. And one is that cooking is a science, and the other is that cooking is an art. And even though we are using set directions like 1/2 cup of powdered sugar, we are probably going to need more powdered sugar later. So I brought this to have all of it. Now you also want to have it straight across the top, and we're going to go ahead and put that in. And I also like to at this point go ahead and put in the smaller ingredients because if you're just mixing them by hand, it's better to get them in early and not get them overwhelmed with the flour. So I've got a pinch of salt, which I will do a measurement video about, but it actually is a particular measurement, at least roughly, and this is the pinch. And then you are supposed to have 1/4 of a teaspoon of baking powder, and here that is. And this is a family edition that I don't think you'll see in too many recipes for it. But my grandmother was always a big believer in the power of adding 1 capful of Watkins vanilla. So I add that too. Now I'm just going to start stirring this, and this is really a recipe, though, even though there is flour in it, in a lot of ways the powdered sugar is going to be playing some of the same roles as flour. And if this is something that you would be rolling out to use as cookie dough, you really want to use powdered sugar instead of flour on your surface that you're rolling them out on, because the powdered sugar is really the important part of making this more like a cookie and less like a bread. I am not going to do that today because that is going to be part of the second big change that I make in the recipe. And I think that's good enough to go ahead and put in the flour. And it's 2 cups of flour, and this is pre-measured, so I'm just going to put in a little bit at a time and stir it. Now, if you're doing this using a mixer, which I have done a lot, it has, you don't have to, it doesn't hardly take any time to mix up if you're doing it with a mixer, but if you're doing it by hand, you want to just add a little bit at a time as you keep going. Alright, well, you notice that took a little bit of time. Like I said, with the hand stirring, it does take a little longer. But as I'm stirring it, you're starting to see big chunks of butter come up. And this is the part that is kind of like bread, because the thing you're going to do next is to knead it. And before I do that, this is the part that, the second part that I've changed, and that is I'm making this in a shortbread mold. And I recommend doing that because it just cooks a lot nicer. A lot of the pictures you see of people making this, they have it very, very skinny cookies. And you can do it that way, but if you look at like the Walker's shortbread, how nice and thick those packages are as they sell it, that's really the better idea of what shortbread should be. So I'm going to start, I stood up on purpose because you can mix sitting down, but if you're going to knead, you need kind of to be standing up. Going to be a little dry, this batch, but I think it'll be okay. Alright, so what we're going to do is I'm going to take the shortbread and push it down in the mold. So this way you're not having to roll anything out, you're not having to, cut the cookies and roll it out again. You're just going to develop a really nice dough that's going to be probably, I don't know, maybe 3/4 of an inch tall. When you get it done, you're going to need to prick it several places on the back with a fork. And once I get this done, I'm going to take it into the house and bake it. And then I will meet you back here. One thing, if you haven't used a shortbread mold before, there's various things, different designs and stuff you can get. This, I actually have 2 of them, and I got the first one because I thought it was the prettiest one that I had seen, because it was very pretty. But it also has a smooth edge. And the first one I got, while very pretty, had a scalloped edge. And one of the ways to make sure it comes out well is to make sure you can make a knife go around the edge. I like to have a flat bowl then. A lot of times I'll use a pie pan, but just to get things nicely flat on top, and then poke it in the back with a fork, and then we will take it into the oven, and I will meet you back here afterwards. Alright, now the place where I left off before we went to go into the kitchen was that you needed to use a fork to poke holes in the back to let steam out. Now, the temperature is really important on this. You're going to need to go around the edge with the knife, and you want it really to be hot when you do this. Now, you can let it sit and cool a little bit at this point, or you can go ahead and dump it out, but you really don't want it to get cold because the temperature does make a difference. And I normally turn it over. I normally turn it over by putting something flat and big enough to cover the whole thing over it, and then I flip it, and with any luck, ooh, that's still hot. And here you go. Now, it just is so pretty. You can scatter powdered sugar on it if you want. I made a batch yesterday and it was pretty dry. This one is actually, I think, closer to normal. It's one of my signature dishes, but my rule is if you don't make a signature dish often enough, the first time you make it again, it's going to be wrong. I had said cut the wedges in half, which you can easily do because they are decorated with a heart, so you can just cut them down the middle. But my mom says to tell you that she wants the whole wedge, and we don't want to mess around with these half wedges. So if you're hungry enough, you can eat them. And they go real well with tea, either ice or hot. Another thing I forgot to tell you about this recipe before is since this cookie does not have any eggs in it, you can eat this cookie dough, which I think is a really good point. And I think that, one thing I wanted to mention, I do use salted butter in this. If you make your own, it most likely will not be salted, and just be aware of that because you may want to adjust the salt up. And I think that is getting close to the end, but let me just read you the recipe again. So it was take 1 cup of softened butter, which if you're using it store-bought, you want to let it set out at least a couple hours. Overnight is best. Half a cup of powdered sugar, 2 cups all-purpose flour, a pinch of salt, a fourth of a teaspoon of baking powder, and 1 teaspoon vanilla. You basically just mix all the stuff up and then press it into a mold. Then take it out of the mold, run the knife around, and there you go. If you were going to be doing this, I know I'm looking off screen, back to my original recipe. If I was going to be doing this, you were doing a real thin cookie, you would probably want to cook it for less time. But this is the basic way to do it. I highly recommend the shortbread mold, and I hope you have a great day and brighten the corner where you are with both Anne and Laura. Here we go, and it's delicious. Remember, brighten the corner where you are, and I'll see you on the next Travel Bed Tales.